Joining us now to discuss the Supreme Court's ruling and the president's response is Gerard Filitti, senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. He's also a foreign affairs and political analyst. And our other panelist, Jonathan Hullihan, president and general counsel of Remnant Law. As a commander in the Navy's Judge Advocate General Corps, he specializes in national security. Two incredible legal analysts joining us today. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. So before I get your reactions to what happened, I brought a clip here with me of President Trump's reaction. Let's just take a quick look at that first.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country, which is right now very proud of those justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that anyone can argue against them.
So, Gerard, I want to go to you first. Give us your reading of the court's ruling as simply as you can, as you understand it. What does it allow? What does it not allow the president to do?
Well, the court's ruling is one that many legal analysts had been expecting. The Supreme Court telegraphed two arguments on this case the way it was looking to rule. So this decision should not have come as a shock to anyone, least of all to President Trump. What the court ruled was that IEPA, an International Emergency Economic Powers Act, is not validly used to impose tariffs on other countries. That's not explicitly written into the statute, so that cannot be the basis by which President Trump imposes tariffs. However, the court did leave open other possible statutes by which the president can impose tariffs. Those remain unchanged.
So, Jonathan, do you agree with Gerard's assessment that the word tariffs was not explicitly used? What stood out to you about this ruling?
I do agree. It wasn't unexpected. However, I think when you look at it from the national security perspective, if you look at IEPA, it's under Title 50, the war powers, all the other trade authorities are under Title 19. So clearly, President Trump was using this initially when he took office to really level the playing field from a national security perspective, whether it's unfair trade practices from an emergency perspective, the fentanyl trade, all of these kind of national security issues that required quick, decisive action from his position under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief. I do agree Congress should have clarified, could have clarified while this whole thing was working up. They could have made some amendments to IEPA. They didn't, and that's what President Trump called for today.
Okay, so Gerard, another thing you can explain for us. President Trump praised the dissenting opinion written by Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh. So explain for us how these justices interpreted the law and how that differs from the majority ruling.
Well, primarily, as we just heard, what the interpretation there was that because this falls within national security, that is something that is within the president's purview, and the Supreme Court gives great deference to the executive, to the president, when it comes to issues of national security. They tend not to second guess him. However, the real import of Kavanaugh's and the dissent opinion is that it gave a blueprint, if you will, to how President Trump can continue to impose tariffs, explicitly referencing sections of the Trade Expansion Act and Trade Act as something that the president could use instead of IEPA to move forward with tariffs. So the import there of this dissenting opinion is that it dissents in part to the conclusion of the majority, but it also provides a ground game for how the president can continue to impose tariffs to some extent.
So, Jonathan, the dissenting statement said that the word regulate should include imposing tariffs. How do you view this? Talk to us about this different approach and interpretation.
So that really fell under the major questions doctrine analysis, where, and I don't want to get too technical for your audience, but essentially under the emergency authority, regulate was not necessarily considered a tariff, and regulate really did fall under those emergency powers. So it was all encompassing, and a tariff is not strictly a tax. I mean, a tariff is a fee, and it's really used under emergency authority granted by Congress to really under the commander-in-chief authority, chief executive, to really level the playing field from a national security perspective. So when they talk about regulate or trade, that's not specifically, it wasn't specifically used in prior, let me back up. Previous cases like the Curtis Wright case that the Supreme Court ruled on really looked at it from regulating trade and gave great deference to the president under Article 2. So that's the precedent. It has been used before, and that really wasn't the analysis in this case. So that's the difference.
Okay, so I have another clip here with me. President Trump complimenting the dissent, noting that the court's decision might not substantially constrain the president's ability to order tariffs. So he announced this plan. Let's just take a look.
So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
Okay, so Gerard, break this down for us, the two parts here, the global tariffs and not exact words, but the emergency tariffs.
Well, so far we've seen tariffs imposed under a number of different theories. The IEEPA ones are the ones that were invalidated by the court. So tariffs imposed under Section 232 and Section 301, those remain valid. Those remain ways that Trump can exercise tariff authority. What he is looking is to expand those to other sectors of the economy. Section 122 is a little bit different. The 10% surcharge, the surtariff, if you will, that is something that is only in effect for 150 days. That's the limit that he can do that without congressional approval. So that really is an interim stopgap measure while the Department of Commerce, in the case of Section 232, or the International Trade Representative, in the case of Section 301, conduct these investigations in order to have findings that additional tariffs are necessary on specific products, on specific sectors, or specific countries. But this is a way that Trump can move forward to replace the IEEPA tariffs that were invalidated.
Okay, Jonathan, can you just add a little bit more here from a legal perspective? Talk to us about the 10% global tariffs in addition to the existing tariffs.
Yeah, I think President Trump is just attempting to double down and make sure that his policy, his foreign policy, and his authority under Article 2 is being implemented under those current authorities, under the 150-day authority that he can implement them. At the same time, that buys him some time to really conduct those investigations, because government, if it falls under these other titles, it's going to move at the speed of government, which is generally slow. So they have to conduct these investigations. They have to make these findings. There's more due process involved. So I think, I don't have inside information, but if I were a bet, he's implementing that to buy some time to get these other investigations completed and then put them on top after the date expires on the emergency authority under Title 19.
Jonathan, just real quick, does these tariffs, the 10% ones, only last 150 days?
As I understand it, yes, that's correct. That they can renew them. I mean, Gerard may need to correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
And anything to add?
I think to some extent they can be renewed, but the statutory language is that they need Congress to sign off on it. So that is something else that Trump could do or could have done all along, which is involve Congress in this process.
Okay, so Gerard, I mean, you both have a background in foreign policy and national security. I'll get your comments both on this. Starting with you, Gerard, what does today's ruling mean for national security and foreign policy?
I think it is a little bit of a blow to Donald Trump's ability to conduct foreign policy. He needed to have that flexibility in order to have these negotiations with countries, to present America as in a strong light with the hammer, the threat of economic pressure in order to bring other countries to the table, whether it was for trade deals or for military presence or for anything else. So now it has to be done the traditional way, going through Congress, going through a long regulatory proceeding, going through the snail's pace of government. So it really does tie Donald Trump's hands in many ways. However, at the end of the day, the United States remains in a very strong position internationally. There were a lot of bilateral treaties that were entered into because of these tariffs, which actually supersede the tariffs. The United States is in a strong position economically to show the rest of the world that even though the Supreme Court struck down this particular tariff, that there are other tools still available. So I don't really think it changes much, but it does continue to leave uncertainty in the economic sphere as to what sanctions will be, what tariffs will be, how long they will be there for. That continuing uncertainty will be an effect on the economy more than on foreign policy.
So, Jonathan, President Trump has credited his tariffs to ending wars. He said today he ended 5 wars using tariffs out of the 8 that he ended. He has used tariffs as a negotiation tactic, pressuring other countries. What happens on this front, Jonathan?
Well, if you look at the national security of the United States, I mean, it really is, with this administration, it is a whole of government approach. It's the diplomatic, the international, the legal, the military, all of those things, the economic, all of those kind of dime national security strategy, whole of government strategy, whether it's using the military on strikes, whether it's using sanctions or tariffs, that's what that means. So he's used the whole of government to achieve his foreign policy objectives. In tariffs, I do agree it does weaken him a little bit, but I think there's a fix here. I think following all the other authorities, the national security authorities under Title 19, it's going to be fine. Now, undermining his foreign policy objectives from a national stage, that hurts. But I do agree with Gerard. It shows the world, we're a constitutional republic. We're a law-based republic, and the president of the United States is going to listen to the Supreme Court, which is a good thing in the long term. I also think it shows, where's Congress in this? Okay, Congress really needs to come to the table and help the president on these. The president of the United States cannot continually fight these battles by himself. There are 3 branches of government. So Congress, under their authority, needs to get with the president. They could have made some modifications to IEPA to clarify. They could do that tomorrow if they wanted to. I mean, they could. They hold the majority. So if they want to do it, they better do it quick. And that's where I stand on that one. Like, Congress needs to be engaged more on these processes, and you can't leave it all up to the president.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point as well. So I brought another clip here with me. The president today also mentioning China specifically. So let's take a listen at this.
We were being ripped off by almost every single country in the world, had some massive surpluses. China had hundreds of billions of dollars in surpluses with the United States. They rebuilt China. They rebuilt the army. We built China's army by allowing that to happen. I have a great relationship with President Xi, but he respects our country now. Now, what we've done, I charged China a 20% tariff as a penalty for sending fentanyl in. And that was 20 times more than they could make by selling fentanyl. And I said, at some point you're going to say, and they have reduced it. Fentanyl is down by more than 30% coming into our country.
So, Gerard, how does today's ruling interact with the Chinese regime? How is the Chinese regime viewing this?
Well, I think China is and will always view Donald Trump with a lot of concern because he has been the one president that has stood up to them in trade. And there are several policies and several laws that he still has available to him, including, I believe it's Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, which is even more powerful than some of the sanctions that he's used so far, some of the tariffs that he's used so far, that he could impose on China, kind of the nuclear option, if you will, to really restrain trade because of that balance of payments imbalance that we're seeing, that trade deficit. Because really, we've been subsidizing China, communist China, building up its armed forces, threatening its neighbors, and taking over economic dominance in a lot of the world. And this has started to be reduced by President Trump's actions with tariffs. We have re-entered the global sphere competitively. So I think China is worried, the president should be worried, that Donald Trump will continue to stand up to them.
Okay, Jonathan, anything to add?
No, 100% agree. I think using those unfair practices authorities and the national security authorities, he can still meet those objectives on the precursors that import fentanyl into the North American continent.
Okay, just one last question here I'd like to ask the both of you, and it pertains to the tariff revenue that has already been collected. President Trump said today he expects this issue to be litigated for years to come. Can I just get, Gerard, starting with you, your feeling here? What happens next with that?
Well, a lot of companies that have not already sued in the International Court of Trade, Trade Court, will do so in order to get back the tariff monies that they paid. But that's only the starting point, because you will also see a lot of litigation between companies. When you have one company that's been charging its consumers or its other company clients more money to absorb the cost of tariffs, and if that company gets refunded, then other companies will want to follow suit. So you will see a lot of lawsuits that'll keep us lawyers busy for years to come, just to figure out what company is entitled to how much money back.
Okay, Jonathan, final thoughts here.
Gerard stole my thunder. The lawyers win, and that's what's going to happen with that. It's going to be years of billable hours, years of associates reading through documents and negotiations. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a mess, just like the dissent discussed with going back to the International Trade Court. And
hopefully that means we'll have you guys on for the next few years as well. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.